Hey everyone, it's Manny here. I just wanted to take the time to talk to you a little bit about current mortgage strategies that I've been working on with borrowers. And this is specific towards the months of October and November. So October-ish timeframe, we saw mortgage rates, they started kind of climbing up. And so I was thinking about different things that could be done to try to help, customers get a mortgage and make it more affordable, essentially. I think one of the big things is because interest rates were climbing, it was pricing a lot of people out of the market. So with that, as mortgage rates increased, there was also sellers having trouble selling their homes. The big mortgage strategy that was effective in those months was to utilize seller concessions. Homes weren't being sold as fast, so sellers were having to concede and give seller concessions to buyers. Now, what I would do is I would take a buyer and I would kind of talk to him about it, and I would say hey, this is what I've come up with. Now, my strategy is a little more aggressive. I try to think of things in the sense of how would I want to go in to buy a home. I think of a home as more of an investment. I don't think of it as my forever home. So what do I want to see and get out of a home that would make it worthwhile for me to purchase it? And so that's what I tell people. I'm like, hey, you can't think of it as your forever home. You got to think of it more as an investment. You got to be ready to walk away if you're going to offer something that's a little more aggressive. And I had, I'd say, 2 of my own loans worked this way, but then also I had a few company loans that I said the same thing to, and it worked out pretty well. What I presented to them is, because I get a lot of VA borrowers, is the VA kind of caps what you're looking for or what you can get in seller concessions at 4%. Now, it can go a little bit above that, and I can explain that, and I'll explain it in another video, but 4% is kind of like a well-known number when it comes to seller concessions for VA loans. So I tell, buyers, hey, try to get that 4% in concessions. If you get that 4% in concessions, at that point we can go ahead and work something out, like getting you a 2-1 buy down, a 1-0 buy down, a 3-2-1 buy down. We will then work the money to make it within your budget, and I show them what a 2-1 buy down would look like. And then I tell them to go ahead and, if that's the sweet spot and they're willing to, if they get a 2-1 buy down and they get 4% in concessions, they're willing to buy the home, what would make it a little sweeter? So I tell them to go ahead and ask for 4% off the purchase price and 4% in seller concessions. It's a little aggressive, but it has been working. In the future months, things may change as interest rates kind of start ticking down, but currently, and what has worked, has worked. So I tell them to make that a part of the offer. Ask for those 2 things, 4% purchase price, come off with the purchase price 4%, and ask for 4% in concessions. The goal is to get one or the other. Now, the way it has worked out is sellers are saying, no, we're not going to give you 4% off the purchase price, but we will give you 4% in concessions, which is good. That's typically what they want. Now, at that point, we go ahead and we look at our options. The most popular one has been getting the 2-1 buy down. And for simple math's sake, the way that works, a 2-1 buy down typically costs somewhere around 2.4% of the purchase price, loan amount. And with a VA loan, typically they kind of match up pretty closely. So 2.4%. Typical closing costs, and you can Google this, come out to be about 3% of the purchase price. So that comes out to be about 5.4% total that's going to be due by the buyer at closing. At that point, we use 2.4%, and so 5.4% is going to be due at closing. 4% is what they got in concessions. So realistically, at the end of the day, if they did a 2-1 buy down and they're using the rest towards closing costs, they should only be on the hook for about 1.4%, right? Simple math. So what I did is a $550,000 purchase. They got 4% in seller concessions. 2.4% is going to go towards the buy down, which leaves 1.6% allowed or additional for closing costs. In total, like I said, 5.4% is due at closing. Subtract that, and it should be 1.4% that is left over. All right. So a $550,000 purchase, and multiply that by 3%, it comes out to be $16,500. That's going to be your typical normal closing cost. And like I said, you can Google this and it'll show you that for a buyer, typically closing costs are around 3% without getting in the nitty-gritty of the numbers, because they can vary a little bit on there. Then if you take $550,000 and you multiply it by 2.4%, you end up with $13,200. Next, so you got 4% in concessions. $550,000 times 4%, that comes out to $22,000. Now if you take it all and you take your $16,500 and which is your 3%, your $13,200, which is your 2.4%, you come up with $29,700. You subtract your $22,000 that you got, and from your $29,700, and you get $7,700 is what you have at the end of the day pay, which is a great deal. You're walking into a home basically only having to come out of pocket around $8,000, and you're getting a 2-1 buy down. Other ways that it can work, like if you didn't want to do the 2-1 buy down, you can go ahead and do a 1-0 buy down, which is cheaper. And we can play around with the numbers and see which is going to be better for you at the end. So hopefully this stuff makes sense. If it doesn't, or you have any questions, go ahead and reach out. We can talk about it. And remember that the entire goal is for you to end up in a home that you feel comfortable with, whether that's on the monthly payment side or that you feel that the purchase price was where you need it to be. So when you're going out there to buy a home, make sure that you're not overextending yourself, or the last thing you want to do is kind of feel buyer's remorse. And yeah, there's always a little bit of a sense like, what did I get myself into when you buy a home? But at the same time, you have to feel comfortable enough with it that it was a good purchase. So whether that's utilizing a 2-1 buy down, getting 4% off the purchase price, or 4% in concessions, like your realtor and your lender should be there to help navigate you through all of those things. That way you feel comfortable, and nothing's going to surprise you at the end of the day, that you don't end up with this mortgage and it's putting you underwater. So make sure you ask for those options, or ask those questions. If it's not me that you're using, you're using somebody else, just don't be afraid to ask those questions, because any good lender out there is going to be receptive, and they're going to try to help you through those scenarios. 2-1 buy down is a great tool to use. Like I said, it's usually about 2.4% of the purchase price. We have successfully done, I'd say, 4 in the last month, and that's because the buyers were willing to put out those aggressive offers. Sometimes circumstances kind of dictate your scenario, and there are times where a buyer isn't willing to put in an offer like that, like they really love the house, and that's one of the reasons why I say don't fall in love with the house, or they're being forced to move, or they need this home, or the market doesn't support it. I know there's certain markets out there that asking for too much in concessions isn't really working, so sometimes they just have to find different ways to kind of get to the same result. And once again, I'll talk about that in the next video. It's kind of like my projections or my plan based on how the market may shift. I just want to say thanks for listening. I really appreciate it, taking time out of your day to kind of listen to what I have to say. But if some of this stuff didn't make sense, or you want further clarification, feel free to reach out, and I don't mind taking the time to run numbers for you. So if you need to know like what a 2-1 buy down would cost, or what you need to ask for in concessions, I don't mind helping people in trying to kind of figure out their scenario, and helping them maximize what they can get out there, and trying to give them the absolute best mortgage loan that is out there. So feel free to reach out anytime, ask any questions, whether it's the comments or you call me. It's I'm more than willing to answer any questions. So thanks again, I really appreciate it.